Peace and respect to you all. Welcome to Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of religions. Our regular show was delayed a little bit because of scheduling issues, and we have too many workaholics within the group of the three of us, so that's going to happen on occasion. My apologies. But I'm glad that you're watching this, even if it is not at the regular time. I appreciate you. So again, we have BigZebra.com, a brilliant, I think, I'm biased, but I think it's a brilliant, very tongue-in-cheek news show about not actual news at BigZebra.com. Go check him out and see what you think of him. And we have and Big Zebra Steve is not at the top of his game tonight, but he's show must go on. He's plowing through anyway. I respect that, and I thank him deeply. And we have Mac, our I don't know, reluctant theist. And I don't blame you for being a reluctant theist. And Mac, I don't think that I could be the theist that theists expect me to be. So we started on a little project, a little side project within a project within a project, and maybe you'd tell everyone what we were talking about there.
For sure. So if anybody's watching this and hasn't checked out Richard's Coherent Bible translation series, definitely go back and check that out. It's an accomplishment. It's very, very fascinating. And what Richard's doing, as far as I can understand, is he's taking the original language of the Holy Bible and doing his best to interpret it without bias. And when he does this, he seems to find a coherent narrative that sometimes aligns with the familiar narrative of the Bible that I know, and sometimes really doesn't, and speaks much more to this bigger idea that Richard speaks about with extraterrestrials seeding our planet, and there being a divine plan in sort of a technological way as much as in a spiritual way. And Richard put the link up. Everybody check it out. It's an incredible document. So anyway, Richard had this idea yesterday we were chatting in email of challenging me to try to replicate his process, which I'm familiar with, I believe. What he does is he looks at the Strong's Concordance, word by word or phrase by phrase of the verse that he's trying to understand, and then understands each word or phrase in a whole way and isolated from any bias if possible, and then pieces them together in the most sensible way that they can piece together. And so I tried to do that with two verses from Genesis, 16:7.
Which ones did you select, Mac?
16:7 and 16:8, which I always understood to be part of the saga of Abraham and Sarah trying to have a child by using their slave, basically, which is an uncomfortable story, no matter how you slice it, and at least in my understanding of it, previous understanding of it, it's confusing. Maybe demands historical context where such things are acceptable. But, a part of this ancient past of the people of God. And it talks about basically Hagar's shame for having conceived Abraham's child instead of Sarah having it. So, which is also sort of a sore subject, frankly, for me, as somebody traditionally educated in the Bible. What's that all about, So anyway,
now, do you have this in handwritten print, or do you have this on a computer where you did it, or what do you have?
I wrote it down. As I processed it. So what I did was I wrote down each word or phrase, and then the best candidates for the meanings of those words or phrases under that. And then I came up with at least two or three, versions of of sentences that could come out of that, and settled on something that sounded like a sentence, in my language. So I don't know what you want first. I could break it all down by the word, and kind of tell you about my process, or
if you used our oldest sources for the actual definitions, and I'm sure you honestly did, then what I want is just the end product.
All right. Okay. All right. End product then. This is what I got. Jehovah journeyed to find God and found him in the middle of the source of the peoples who travel from that source to the end.
Okay.
It's still pretty clumsy grammatically, but that's what I ended up with.
Well, I can certainly see where you got that from. I dug it into the next levels of etymology of these words and found out that messenger angel, which you're seeing as God, is actually the deputized messenger angel, which means they didn't begin that way. So it did not begin as God, becomes God.
I see.
So you can see where that's in the text, yeah?
Yes.
To find and attain to him who acts on behalf of those of the fountain, of the eye of the landscape.
Right.
And or born of the womb.
I just condensed that in the source. Then it's and what I have, it's the description of those people, and they are those who travel from that source to the end.
Right. Absolutely.
So journey. Right.
And how are they away from the source?
They're in the wilderness.
Right. And what does the word wilderness right there mean?
Lots of stuff. Speech.
It's surprising how much it means. Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely a key word here. It can mean mouth.
It could mean any new idea, any new spoken word or promise, any unfamiliar territory, both literal or figurative. Okay, so to say wilderness is a super generalized term that appears often in the King James Version, and they never qualify what they mean by that wilderness, whether it's physical or spiritual, whether it's a new idea or a new way of looking at an old idea. They don't specify.
Right.
But wilderness just means someplace you haven't been. So you can see why the word is useful to say wilderness there. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and so they struggle from there to the end, or to the wall, to cross over it.
Right. And it seems you're missing an entire idea from that.
Right. I think there's
the idea of the hero, the one who treads the path, bends the bow, leads the people, marches his army. That whole idea right there is missing from yours. And all of that is based in the word. Which word was that based in? It was based in vision. If you look into the etymology of the word vision, it means not just to see things, but to know things. And then if you look at what it means to know something in that particular word, the etymology of that particular word, you come up. It comes up with bending the bow, treading the path. That's how you know things, because you learned. And you stretched, and you did all these things, and that's how you know and or see something.
Right.
So when I wrote this like this, this will be to attain the deputized messenger, angel of Jehovah, to find and attain to him who acts on behalf of those of the eye of the landscape or born of the womb, so that the waters are commanded, promised, and warned in the wilderness throughout, by the vision of him who treads the path of the road, who bends the bow for the distance, who leads the people on a journey. And all of these are definitional. I didn't make up any of this.
Right.
And marches the army in his manner on their journey to cross over a wall, or to overcome a barrier. I think it's impossible to get deeper and with more background than that. But
no, that's
in the English, we would never put visual sight, like it says there, vision, like sight. We would, in the King James, you would never look at the word sight, being an English speaking person, and think that this person who had this sight went through a series of hard steps of learning. You wouldn't automatically think that. But there's other word, sight or see or vision, which doesn't have all this background, which is not part of this sentence.
I see.
So it's just like, here's another weird example for any Christian who might be listening. If I were Hebrew speaking and I wanted to say a powerful being, I would say Eloah. Eloah. If I wanted to say several or many powerful beings, plural, I would say Elohim, not Eloah. Okay? So the word Elohim in the Bible, when there was a word that meant singular powerful, does indeed mean multiple powerful beings. And there's just no denying it. So I'm running into a lot of that sort of thing, where the translation into these modern into these modern translations, they're just way too brief, entirely too brief. So that's most of what I'm doing with this is being a lot more thorough.
Sure, fleshing it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Well, the next verses that I attempted it turned out fairly brief as well. I don't know if I'm trying to make it brief instead. I'm going to think about that next time I do one of these. I'm going to think about fleshing it out, because there's a lot of words in this next one in Genesis 16:8. A lot of Hebrew words. A lot of them are repeated, and I'm not sure that that's significant. But I think that a couple of words really stood out to me. But if I could, I'll just read it out, what I ended up with again. The slaves that speak quickly spread out from the barren land. This is how I enter, speaking, moving, passing through, until I meet the princess of heaven, or the most amazing feminine deity. I wasn't sure how to translate that, but it's over the top, like praising kind of language.
Yeah, it really is. It's putting in high regard. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's see yours.
It is
here.
very repetitive. I noticed that in your recitation, you left out 2 out of 3 of the repetitive phrase. Although you apparently saw it there, you wouldn't have mentioned that it was repetitive. You wouldn't even have known that. If you'd only read the King James, you'd have never known that those phrases are each used 3 times. You would never know that reading the King James.
Right.
But as soon as you go to the lexicon, it repeats and repeats and repeats, and you go, well, what the heck, man? Like,
right. Is that for emphasis? What is that?
It's not for emphasis, because there's subtleties of the words in between that make it not only for emphasis, but also to expound upon it. So here's the most literal translation I can come up with. Now I speak of the flight of will act as a ruling princess. That in the English, that ends up being a name, but
right.
That name literally means will act as a ruling princess, who is my separated slave girl, into nothing. So it's a flight into nothingness. Well, that's interesting in and of itself. Where this one will go, and into nothing, and where those who die go. And I will speak to those, which put to flight, to turn their faces in the faces of will act as a ruling princess, and she will prevail as ruling lady queen, and will act as a ruling princess. So it's putting some female specific out of a very, very large group of separated slave girls or people in the wilderness who believe in God, separated slave girl. But there's one particular one who he's calling will act as a ruling princess. And then he declares that it will actually happen, so thereby prophetic. Can you see how I can get that out of those?
It's the she will. I really missed that phrasing. Absolutely see it though.
You wouldn't have got the word will. You could have gotten she because of context short term, but you wouldn't get will unless you did all the way from 16:1.
Oh, okay.
Where it establishes this is all future tense.
I see.
And it doesn't establish it during any of it, but it establishes it at the opening. So you wouldn't have known that. So you shouldn't have gotten the word will out of it.
The word I really stood out to me. The word I seems so isolated and pronounced, that Anoki word. Yeah. And then I Googled it sort of independently, and it's significant, I think, that it's the first word in the so-called 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
The same word. I think that's a big word.
It is a gigantic word, that word I right there. It's the same I that appears as I am.
Right.
When declaring self. The same word as I God. When declaring self God. That I.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. That's a very cool verse. And by the way, it's almost unrecognizable from the King James Version.
Would you read the King James from this verse 16:8?
It says, "And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence camest thou, and whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai."
Which means she didn't answer the question.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's where she came from.
Yeah.
It doesn't say where she's going.
Yeah. It sort of is just what she's doing right at that moment. Has nothing to do with anything else. That's just stating the obvious.
And I actually, as you read on, I think the Christians have worked very, very hard. The scholars have worked very hard, both theologian and secular alike. I appreciate and respect the work they've put into it. Unfortunately, to stick with a reading frame that makes sense, they had to literally omit much of the text. And I was showing Steve, who I hope he's taking a nap right now because he could probably use it. I was showing Steve before the show began this. Now this is I'm going to go to 16:8 because that's where we just were, so you can see exactly the same thing. And I'm gonna share my screen of what literally 16:8 is from the most original that we have available. And it looked a little something like this, and click that, and boy, lots of stuff. And I'm not a pro. It's just a bunch of stuff. All right, so here we are at 16:8, and I'm.
Right.
You tell me if you can't see that. You can, right?
I can, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'm gonna bring that. I should bring that center screen so everyone can see it as good as possible. Because I'm going to show you where the Bible says leave no part out. If you're reading it in English, according to your Bible, you should throw away your Bible. And that sounds ridiculous and sad, but it's actually true. Here's why I say that. This first line right here, and he said, which we just read, right? Well, guess what? See how there's a Hebrew word right there?
Yeah.
That's definition 599. That is the word said or speak or promise.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Does this right here look anything like that word?
No.
You know why it doesn't look the same? Because it's not. It's a completely different word. It doesn't mean said. speak, or promise. And guess what? Not here.
Wow.
Not here at all. Let's see if they did that only once. Well, what's this? This word Hagar right here, definition 1904. But right above it is the word Hagar again.
Yeah.
It's twice written there, but over here, are there two Hagars? No. So this actually reads flight of flights, not the word Hagar at all. Hagar has no meaning to an English-speaking person. And here we have Sarai, Sarai, which mean bride of brides, or wife of wives, or bride wife. You see? Here we have the word maid, as in slave girl. And again, you can see it's repeating over here and not over here. Now, they did this. If you look, every one of them has two words, right? That's why mine has so many words. Because I didn't leave them out. So I literally have twice as many words I had to work with here. Some are the same, some are different. So literally, if you're reading the King James, you cannot be reading the Bible. You can't. It's not your fault, but you can't. So I can't say that I would ask someone, peace and respect, Flow State, that I would ask someone to do the work that I'm doing. It's pretty much a full-time job. And it's going to take me about 2 years to finish this. And but I am putting it into the cloud at that address in the side chat. I am doing a hardbound copy of the same thing. I finished my first drawing. Do you want to see it?
Love to.
I want to show you my first drawing. Okay, so it's going into a book, but I'm doing a centerfold layout.
Cool.
Get rid of the rice paper. And get rid of the green screen. Tools, green screen, none. Close. And there you go. Can you see that? Wait a minute. Too far. Too angled.
There we go.
Wait a minute. Let me do this. Let me do this. There we go.
Oh, cool.
Try to make this as good as I can. Okay, so
see the Garden of Eden there. Simeon.
Trying to get it centered. Okay, so there you have the cherubim all the way around, which are the tribes or the zodiac. The flaming sword turning every way in the center there. Outside of that, the place scattered for, these are the words that describe the Garden of Eden. Scattered for increase, a travailing circle, where is shimmering water and fair weather, a pearl divided where pale family building blocks. That's literally one of the names of the places. Pale family building blocks, bursting forth to be drawn up, those in darkness breaking forth in fruitfulness. That's what those rivers and places mean in the text. If you translate them. Of course, you don't translate them. They mean squat.
Right.
They mean, words you don't know what they mean. That's what they mean.
Really cool.
So that's the first drawing. I'm gonna do a drawing for every major theme, and that's gonna be like, I'm gonna do each one of them centerfold layout style.
Awesome.
So if you like, that'll be the tab that's actually sewn into the book right there. And then you'll be able to open this up when you get to that page.
I love it. Very cool.
I like it. I don't know if it's cool or not, but I think it's worthy of the work.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you for doing it. But also, like, I encourage other people to try doing it too, because it's very rewarding. It at least as an interesting puzzle kind of exercise. But also you get a whole lot of like, oh my gosh, kind of moments too. So
tell you what I started doing to make the workload easier, make it more fun, and be more of an emotional and shared experience. Do it as a Christian party game.
Oh, nice.
Put a notebook,
yeah,
a Strong's, and a Bible in 3 people's hands, and have at it, man.
That's great. That's a great
it'll
idea.
Change your brain. It's really, I tell you what, it's weirdly exhilarating.
Exactly.
You wouldn't expect it to be that much fun.
Right. It's true. Yeah.
I mean, for the very, very deeply biased believer, it's exhilarating.
Right.
It probably wouldn't be like that for everyone.
That's the thing. I mean, I think that's the thing with Steve, if he's still with us or not, or folks like him, I guess, skeptics and hard-boiled atheists. I'm not saying that derisively. I appreciate that worldview a lot, but there's an immediate hesitation to approach the subject in any kind of meaningful way. I mean, one of my biases is that that the Bible is meaningful, is that it's important. And, one of my frustrations is that I find so much within it that is contrary to my personal ethics and to my personal understanding of history and things like that. And so seeing
could you tell me one of those? And I think it'd be most useful to anyone who watches this in the future if we did something history and not personal.
Okay. All right. We did that once before. One of our first conversations, I brought up the whole flood event, which is a classic one to discuss in that context. And you turned it upside down and inside out, just like you do with all of that was one of my first, like, I need to sit with what Richard just said kind of moments after that discussion.
I think it's dishonest to take a piece of literature where the author defines a word and how they're using it and ignore that. I think that's dishonest.
Right.
And by definition, that's what the Christians have to do to maintain the flood of H2O narrative. They have to ignore parts of the Bible to do that.
Right. Which, not all Christians believe that that's a historical event. It's and it's not the kind of Christianity I was brought up in, although it does seem to be fairly pervasive in the United States.
Sure.
I mean, it's common within Catholicism to understand that that's more metaphorical or symbolic and not actually historical. But if even the things that are considered historical by all Christians, like the events of Acts or the events described in Paul's letters.
What's wrong with Acts?
What's wrong with it? It's just not. Well, I mean, it's just not necessarily historically accurate. I mean, there are miracles that occurred that are described in Acts.
Could you name one?
Sure. There's, the speaking in tongues. One.
Okay, what is that?
That's classically understood to be. I'm sure you have a wildly different understanding of this, but it's classically understood to be. An ability to prophesy and to exclaim truths and the Gospels in languages that weren't previously understood. This ability was considered a miracle by the people that were experiencing it, at least. So.
Okay. So my understanding of that miracle is, first of all, it never sounds like yabba dabba do, yabba dabba dabba do. That's the first thing. Right. And there's plenty of people out there faking the funk, and they're basically self-hypnotized and self-convinced, and that has nothing to do with the Holy Ghost. Nothing at all. Okay. On the other hand, if you were in a mic in my ear, right, and no one could see you, and you were telling me personal and private things that you know that I don't, I could certainly repeat them. Okay. In biblical text, that's called being possessed. Now, you can be possessed by an angel. You can be possessed by a demon. That is, something is giving you information. Yes, I'm going to have a hard time showing actual prayer. I have lots of evidence to prayer. Explaining what prayer is another matter. But basically, the transfer of information that the person relating it did not have. So much of a microphone in the ear. I'm sorry, microphone, a speaker in the ear.
Right.
Okay, so something like that.
Okay.
So that they're able to say things and they don't even know what they're saying. Now, that is useless and doesn't do anybody any good if no one in the area knows what you're saying. You might as well be saying, etc. on the rilla and a frolic suet. It doesn't make any sense. Nobody gets you.
That's right.
It's pointless. Okay. But what the text actually reads is that if you have someone that you should be testifying to, but you don't speak their language, go into prayer and allow that whisper in your ear. And no matter what noises it makes, repeat them. Okay. Because that voice, that FBI wire in your ear actually knows the language where you don't. So it doesn't even matter that you know what you're saying or that you're saying it well, just enough that you can say it, that the person who naturally speaks that language would understand it. Now, if there's a group of people around, the story says not to do that unless there's someone bilingual. Now, the bilingual person could easily translate what you're saying and tell the other person. But it's much more impressive if you speak a language you don't know.
That would be impressive.
It would be. Now, when does it happen? According to the story, it happens in Pentecost. It happens during the time of the last of the testimony. It happens as a point of desperation when the earth is almost ended. It happens in the last 40 days. So it's kind of like pulling out all the stops and doing whatever to impress whomever that will change their mind.
Gotcha.
In other words, it's not even supposed to be done as a casual thing. I don't think that angels granting their ability to communicate with us, and if you're going to be a believer in these higher beings, and I'll just say powerful beings of all kinds, then there's no justifying the influence of Satan and his kind on this earth without them praying to us. Then certainly you have to admit that prayer is possible. And if prayer is possible and this world is evil, then angels can communicate as well. And if you're going to admit all that, they can tell you whatever they want. Okay. So it's much like the FBI wire in the ear. It's perfectly within our abilities to repeat what we hear, or even allow like a trance-like state so that it goes through you easier, where you're just a speaker. You're just speaking it. You're not thinking about it or trying to figure it out. You're just kind of going with the flow of it.
Sure.
And if you can figure out how to go with the flow of it and just become a speaker to that wire in your ear, then you are possessed, and you'll be speaking in tongues. Now, I do know of one actual occurrence of this happening. One actual one.
Huh.
To you, this is anecdotal. To anyone who watches this video, it's anecdotal, which means either A, it's a really neat story that Richard told you, or B, it could be true, but you don't know. But here's how the story goes. Met a 73-year-old man who'd been married all of his life practically, and his wife died of I think it was cancer or something. I don't remember what it was. And when they were a little bit younger, they had befriended this Hebrew girl because she was local in the neighborhood. They were Pentecostals. They weren't Hebrew. Okay. But the wife dies and the little girl grows up and she's in college and she likes the old man, and he never did anything stupid like want to hit on her. He really respected her as like a daughter figure kind of thing. And they remained friends, and she'd call like once a month from college. She was getting her master's in something. I don't know what. But anyway, she was taking spoken Hebrew in college, some kind of course about spoken. I don't know what it was. Sorry.
Okay.
And he was going to this Pentecostal church, and he never did speak in tongues. And he always was put down by other parishioners. They were always like, you can work yourself into it. Just practice a little. Say yabba dabba. Okay, now say yabba dabba do. Now say yabba dabba 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 do. And yes, you can convince yourself you're saying something, but are you saying something? Well, you're quoting Fred Flintstone. So you have fun with that. So he's on the phone with this woman after having read the Bible some 40 times in his life, after praying about speaking in tongues, after really, really wanting it. He's on the phone with her, and he knows what happened because it's past tense, all right? And he found out what happened. But when he told me the story, how he recalled it to me was, and the phone cut out for just a millisecond, maybe a third of a second at the most. And then it came back on, and he picked up the conversation where the phone cut off, and he kept going, right? As soon as he continued on with the thought, the Hebrew girl goes, whoa, 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 whoa. What are you doing there? What was that? He goes, what was what? She goes, that thing that just happened. He says, the phone cut out. He said, no, the phone did not cut out. You just spoke something. I want you to repeat it. He said, I didn't say anything. The phone cut out. So by his perception, nothing had happened but a flash of time.
Right.
Okay. She told him, according to him, I'll grant that, according to him telling me, she told him that he had said in perfect, the best Hebrew she'd ever heard, even above her college professor, may the light of the Lord shine upon you through your day. Which is not two words. So apparently he got what he wanted, and he got someone who understood it, and they were able to relate to him what he'd said, and he didn't speak that language. Mm-hmm. That's an example of speaking in tongues.
Okay.
As far as I understand it. I have not spoken in tongues yet. I'd be okay with it.
Have you ever heard of the concept of a universal language that everyone would understand if they heard it, like a primary language that all languages come from, kind of idea?
I don't know that is impossible. To answer your question, Jesus is Lord. Your Lord wrote that. So you don't have to like it. That's okay with me. But you'll notice when you look up words from your King James or whatever edition you read, Jesus is Lord, that they leave words out. They substitute words that aren't there. They completely change the meanings of some things. And if you're honest, you're aware of that. This is a direct translation. I'm not asking you to like it. It is what was originally written, as close as can possibly be in English. Leaving out 0 of the words, which, by the way, I showed that in the first half of this show. If you want to go back and watch the beginning of the show, you'll see me showing you that your King James is not the Word of God, and it cannot be, and they knew it when they did the translation. They knew it. So sorry. But enough about that. I wish you'd give it an honest try, Jesus, Lord. You might better understand your Father, and that would be a beautiful thing. Okay, moving on then. I don't want to concentrate too much on that.
All right.
Okay. So I think that's what speaking in tongues is in the real, is an allowed and permission-given possession by some angel who speaks the language of whomever you need to testify to.
Okay.
You see, a translator may not be a deeply religious person able to testify. They may not even say what you wanted them to say. Okay, so there you go. It could be useful in certain situations. So
if I could just clarify sort of a fundamental thing, this would qualify as historical and as prophetic. That's correct, right? This is a process where every part of the process, the accounts and acts, the miracle, all of the accounts of Acts. You describe them as prophetic and as happening toward the end, and I'm trying to understand from what you've gotten from the text. Is this a process that even down to that minutia occurs repeatedly? Like, is this a necessary step toward the final moment, or is it just sort of a obvious progression? Like, of course, we're going to get to a point where we're desperate enough to employ tongues in this way.
So I think everything that you just said was reasonable, first of all. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's true that the powerful beings who can communicate with us have been communicating with us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we're all mixed up. And that's why we don't live as innocent, beautiful children as even into adulthood and through adulthood. And why we don't have that kind of open, trusting love that we were born with, why that goes away. Okay. But I think that the positive, powerful beings who have been communicating with us have given evidence, although limited, very limited, in the past of their existence. Because, frankly, you don't want to pee in the punch. Mm-hmm. It would be against our existence on this planet to have perfect revelation and proof. That would just ruin us. People don't like to look at it that way, but it's true. If you were in on the joke, well, then what are we doing here? Just sitting here. And if everybody understood that, there'd be no reason for us to be here at all. God just might come and collect us up and just scratch the whole idea. He might as well throw it away. If we had solid proof, that we could show everyone, and everyone would come to believe, we might as well just be in heaven at that point. None of us are going to be suffering or causing suffering or learning empathy or finding out why evil is evil. We wouldn't be learning those things if we all had full revelation of full truth. It'd be a waste of our time to be here at that point. So he doesn't do that. Okay. But in the past, have angels and or Jehovah acted upon, and the Father acted upon us, obviously. We have known things way ahead of schedule, scientific things that we shouldn't known when we call them leaps forward in science. But why don't we ever stop and say, well, how was there this leap forward in science? Why don't we ask that question? Well, because it just dawned on somebody.
Right.
He was bathing.
Right.
He wasn't in the lab. He was taking a bath.
Yeah.
He was in the middle of scratching his back with a scrub brush, and it hit him.
Sure.
Where'd that come from? Tesla literally proclaimed it. I take these ideas out of the ether.
Right.
He says they weren't my ideas. I can tell they're coming from outside, but I can hear them.
That's
and then I do drawings and I write them down and I take notes and I try to make it actually work, And he has some ability and some background. What's that?
I said all kinds of art. Yeah, musicians, they all report the same
Interestingly enough,
external inspiration.
The Christian thinks as soon as they really understand prayer, or they think they really understand the Bible, they get Christian block. Like writers get writer's block. Like artists get art block. As soon as you're too proud of yourself, you are no longer the conduit, because you are your own conduit at that point. And you've turned off the valve that allows God. So that's not smart. And yeah, it happens in all kinds of art. It surely does. And which makes me suspicious as to where all this inspiration is coming from.
That's a great question.
The people who've been truly, truly inspired say things like, Edison said, inventing is only 1% inspiration. It's 99% perspiration, which means he invented something that he himself didn't understand. Could you please tell me how to invent something that you don't understand?
Right.
Okay, that makes no sense on its face. Why did he have to investigate what came to his brain? Maybe it wasn't from his brain. So that's how I look at that.
That's great.
I mean, when something comes to me that I don't know, right?
Right.
And I can plainly see it, it's fine to be able to plainly see it. Say people have seen automatic transmissions, right? That long bell housing with the hole in one end and a big disc on the other end. And okay, now tell me what's inside of it.
Right.
Most people have no idea what's inside of an automatic transmission. Looking at the outside of it, you could never guess, because the guts don't look like the housing.
Right.
It's not a stack of Russian dolls. It's not what's in there.
Totally.
So I think that we have
great.
several times been held by the hand like a 5-year-old, led across the street to where we need to go. And it was where we needed to go. That's fine. And it moved us forward. It propelled us. And we call it art, and we call it science, and we call it math, and we call it a lot of things. But It seems to me it's always this intuitive information from outside of self when you're not on the job that is the true jumps forward.
All right, not to derail this, but while you were rattling those types of knowledge off, I suddenly flashed on the whole Enochian saga and the Watchers being responsible for our original knowledge in those specific areas, science and agriculture and art. Makeup, I think, is mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we got another JIL message here.
Yeah. Well, Jesus is Lord. I'm aware of that. I'm glad you're aware of that too. Now address the actual challenge, please. Tell me that you understand there are words missing from the English translations, and that you did bother to look some of them up, and you understand a deeper meaning because of your research. Tell me that. Because this comment here, you're telling me stuff that I know. I'm glad you know it too. Now address my actual challenge. Have you read the Bible or not? I think your answer is still going to be no. Even though you know that the words from our best, oldest sources don't line up with the modern translation. You know that. All you have to do is look up one verse and you're going to see evidence of it.
It's really true. Got to check that out. Just pick a verse.
It doesn't even matter which one you pick. They left words out and they added words they didn't need to. And they changed the meanings of certain words. Just tell me, please tell me how you get and. The idea of and, which could be beside or against or with. I'm good with those definitions. That's fine. I can see and being beside, with, which, those kinds of ideas. You can't get like and out of say, I want to use an actual example, and they're skipping my mind of an actual one where they did this. I know how to fix that problem.
I think they did that in Genesis 16:8.
I know they did, like several times.
Yeah, they used and in a different way.
Yeah, they literally translated the word and from something that cannot mean that. I mean, it just cannot.
Right, amar.
Which
means
what? Speak?
Speak, right.
Yeah, how do you get and out of speak? There's a great example.
Yeah.
How do you get the word and out of the word speak? Please, someone describe that to me.
And then that kicks it off. So then a proper name for the next word doesn't make sense. So
it doesn't.
Yeah. So you've got to start recontextualizing the whole thing if you're not going to translate that as and, which why would you?
I don't know how a Christian can deny that since it's written so many times and it's repeated so many times in the text that you must not change it and you must not leave anything out, quoting Jesus, not a jot nor a tittle, nothing.
Right.
And a jot, by the way, is how you cross a T, and a tittle is how you dot an I.
Huh.
That's called a jot and a tittle. Okay.
Interesting.
So Where we get the expression is to say crossed your T's and dotted your I's is a quote from Christ.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's literally what those terms mean. Not a jot nor a tittle. Cross your T's, dot your I's. Make sure that it's all perfect, no doubt. Okay?
Nothing
Literally every English translation breaks that rule. If you can find me and no, I'm sorry, Young's literal translation is not a literal translation. It's a figurative translation. And they did the same thing. Because I got all excited when I saw the title Young's Literal. I went, oh boy, I don't have to do this.
I haven't even heard of that.
The YLT?
Yeah, no. Is it newer?
Yeah. It's one of the newer ones, but it doesn't matter. It says
Right.
the same thing as the King James.
Right.
And if you compare the words in the YLT to the Greek lexicon, you're going to find they left stuff out, period. They did.
That's too bad.
I guess they thought it wasn't necessary. But, you know, if you have two sentences strung together with a continuation of an idea, you are going to have to use some of the terms twice, one time in each sentence. So I've heard my whole life, the Hebrew would write things several times for emphasis, and that is sometimes true. But most often it's a break in sentence. What's going on there most often is breaking a sentence into two parts because they're continuing with the same idea and they had to repeat a phrase in order to continue and show you that they're continuing.
I see.
And what they did in the King James is they left the sentence structure they wanted and just omitted the word. Well, now you have different commas and periods and words left out. And you want to talk about something that'll change the context? Oh, yeah, that'll change the context.
Yeah.
Right quick.
Punctuation, for sure.
Yeah. How about this sentence? And everything before it was in the earth. And everything before it was in the earth. That's one comma. That's it. Very different ideas. Exactly the same words.
That's important.
Yeah,
certainly. I'm sure you've confronted rebuke and reprove with this before, and more people like that, like him or them.
No, not really. I haven't.
Oh.
Because they don't have the ability to be that honest.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you've said it, but they haven't received it.
Well, they won't even seriously consider it.
Right.
I mean, I'll hear absolute insanity within the community that I argue. I'll hear things like it was a local flood. Right. I don't know how you cover the tops of all mountains in a local flood.
Right.
You can't. You could say, well, it was all mountains by their perspective that were covered. You can even say they're in a ditch, which that part of the world is in a bit of a bowl. That's true. But the mountains are also really tall. You couldn't cover the top of those mountains without flooding that entire continent. So it's at least a continental flood. They go, no, it's a local flood. Well, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, but water will not stand up on its own. You can't pile it up like so many bricks. It doesn't work. It's just too darn thin.
Right.
Okay? It's going to flow out. I heard a very, very intelligent, I'm not going to say his name. He's actually in scholarship. He's actually a teacher on this topic. Okay? He's a brilliant guy. I'm not saying he isn't. Okay? But how someone, actually it does make sense to me, that someone really intelligent can talk themselves into whatever they want. Why? Because they're smart enough to do that. They can find a way to make it make sense. which is really funny because that's exactly the kind of person like Jill I want to have conversations with. What do I want to do? Talk to someone who is just darn right dull as bell metal, and they'll believe anything you say, and then next week they're Hindu? Is that what I want to waste my time with?
Right.
No, I don't want to waste my time on that person. I want a person who's intelligent and tough and thinks about these critically. But what I find is people who are intelligent and tough and don't know how to think. They can't be honest about it. They don't know how. And that's just frustrating and disappointing, Frank. Okay, it's neither frustrating nor disappointing. It's none of those things.
No?
It's laborious.
Okay.
I'll say it's laborious. I don't get actually frustrated, and I'm not disappointed because that means I expected something that was shouldn't be expected. I wasn't disappointed. It's just like very laborious. It's tiring.
Right.
It's tiring to just keep saying this stuff, and people go, I don't know where the hell you're getting that from. And I'm like, the Bible. You've heard of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this single point of there being words left out or added or changed is very obvious and easy to demonstrate, and directly challenges the authority of the standard narrative. So, sure. I mean, I guess I haven't heard you have that conversation with an apologist. I mean, I haven't watched all of your videos, obviously, but I'd be interested in their response. I'd be interested in Jill's response.
I'll tell you one of them. Another academic who I have not mentioned in this conversation said, I'm not going to bother to read this translation you're working on because I know that your methodology is flawed because you don't agree with me. I mean, I followed the logic of that pretty good. That was, you don't agree with me, thereby you're wrong. And who does he agree with? Ancient church father, scholarship, theologian, secular scholars.
Right.
Fine, but there's so many of those of so many of you that you actually cherry picked what you wanted to believe.
That is true.
There is every variation of that to please any taste bud. So don't tell me that your church is right and you're with it because it's the right church. No. You picked the flavor you wanted of the 31 flavors. That's what happened. That church did not pick you. You did not see the truth in that church.
Right.
You made yourself happy. Well, guess what? I'm not here to make you happy, and I don't. However, it is what the Bible says.
Right.
Accept it or not. And by the way, I think, for without the continuous context of several of the verses, and just looking at the first and second set, and I could tell you looked into the second set of some of the etymology. I could tell you did that.
Yeah,
I thought you did really pretty good. It was pretty darn thorough. But I tell you what, it didn't sound like the King James now did it.
No, definitely not. If that fell apart right away, like I said, first word, it can't mean that. So, and I don't know. I mean, I've been exposed before for having biases I wasn't aware of, and as I've progressed into adulthood, that's happened to me in a few different contexts. So I'm always cautious about, because I am fond of what I'm learning from you. So I wonder how much of that I put into the text unknowingly. And I'm also, historically very drenched in classic American Protestantism. And so, and this story is very familiar to me, story of Abraham and Hagar and everybody. And so that bias, I'm sure I didn't shake. It's just too big right now. I'm sure that I had that burden while I looked at this text. But it was challenged, and I guess what I'm saying is I'm not even as open-minded as I think the perfect objective observer would be, and it's still it still was effective in shaking my understanding of those verses and completely changing them. So, and then of course, to understand that they could be developed further and fleshed out even more is enticing, I think is the right word.
Well, you did it really fast without continuous context, and so I thought you did a great job, actually.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, I thought it was honest, and I thought that is a reasonable way to look at what the words said in the first place. It was.
Right.
Of course, it's not as fleshed out and thorough as what I'm doing because I got a leg up on you.
Yeah. Yeah, you've been at it a while.
In what? 16 prior verses for one thing.
Right.
So that's kind of a leg up to have that context.
Right.
And I am getting faster at it. I'm starting to learn some of the words.
Sure.
And then I just copy paste down, and actually there's a lot of that going on. Nice. So I don't have to look it up 5 times. Now it's rote memorization of what the word yasa means. Oh, that was this phrase. Click.
Right.
So I can do it pretty quick, and it's not so laborious, and really I enjoy doing it.
Yeah. And the stories repeat in different ways, right? And in different contexts. Like in a very real way, this is talking about Mary and so I would assume that the structure of the narrative as well kind of becomes familiar and you know what to look for when you're piecing it all together. That wasn't an advantage I had either.
I'm at where am I at in that document so far? How far have I gotten? Hold on a second. I don't want to tell a lie.
I have it open too. You have 82
I've gotten
pages.
To 16:16 so far.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm at Genesis 16:16 thus far, and to speak to what you just said and just how true it is, it's like, I'm still learning the words by, visual rote memorization. I don't understand the letters at all, but it's getting to, even within those just 16 chapters, it's already to where I recognize a new word and there's going to be a new idea attached to it. Maybe it's only like once every 6 or 7 verses that I find a new word. This is like, and that's interesting in and of itself.
Yeah.
This is extremely basic speech within that language.
Right.
They are using the same terms again every time they can. They're using exactly the same words.
Very interesting.
This is like, you know what that makes me think?
It was written for children?
Sort of.
Okay.
It makes me think the angels are freaking brilliant and they're dumbing it down.
Right.
That's what I think.
Right.
Like they're super mega brilliant and they're being simple on purpose.
Little did they know we'd still screw it up. Or maybe they did know.
I'm sure they were aware. We'd still screw it up. And we have. Plainly we have.
Yeah.
Okay. Ending thoughts. We've already gone over an hour, bro.
No, what a great chat. Thank you for being flexible with your time today. My
pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. And the rest of the month, I should be fine for our regular time on Wednesday.
And you know what? If you're not, that's okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I'm sure Steve isn't going to be sick every Tuesday. So
I hope
that's going to work out. Probably work out better next time. Poor feller.
Absolutely.
I don't even want to say his name too loud. I'm afraid I'll wake him up. I hope he's asleep. He should be asleep right now. But we're just going to wrap this up whether he comments or not. And hopefully he's getting some rest that he needs. He's had a rough 24 hours or so.
Yeah. Sleep well.
So thank you again, Mac.
Yeah, thank you. Really. And look forward to next week. We'll have some more fun.
If you wanted to do an interesting experiment and you'd said, my view might be coloring yours.
I think it might be.
Okay.
At this point, yeah.
Pick a topic we haven't talked about. We haven't talked about everything in the Bible. I know that.
No, definitely not.
Pick something you know exists there that we have not spoken of. Do a literal translation.
Okay.
Okay. That would be the next step.
That's a great experiment. I love it. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll do it. Okay. Thanks. All right.
Maybe we'll bring that up next week. Thank you very much, Mac. Peace and respect to you. Peace and respect to Steve. And Flow State and Jill. Jill, I have some respect for your mind. Please enter into an honest conversation.
Me too.
Sometime. We'd have you on the show if you wanted. Okay. You can engage with me anytime you like. You're welcome in my house. All right. Till next time, guys, peace and respect to you all. Anyone who might watch this in the future, thank you for viewing this. Because of algorithms and stuff, if you would do the stuff that YouTube wants you to do, I'd appreciate it. You know, of course, I think I'm telling the truth. Of course, I'm also biased. But if I happen to be telling the truth, it would be nice if more people heard it. Okay? I could be completely wrong and just an idiot. But if this is true, it would be nice if more people heard it. And you can assist me in that by voting and commenting and stuff like that. Okay. So until next time, guys, peace and respect to you all. And I want you all to know I truly do look forward to the day that we're all great friends.